You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, June 17th. I was just telling Weston, happy Father's Day to him. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there that hopefully had a great weekend over the weekend celebrating their good parenting. So, but Weston, it is Monday. You're joining me today. It is crazy, right? I mean, it's almost like we predicted that the 49ers or their players would give us content even in this slow period. And well, we got some more to talk about for sure. The latest thing that happened was Brandon Aiyuk taking to TikTok. Yeah, that's a new one, right? Don't often see that, but he went to TikTok, had his longtime partner film him on FaceTime with Jaden Daniels, who, you know, as you guys may or may not have known, played with him at ASU for one season. Jaden Daniels, now a rookie. He was drafted by the Washington Commanders in April, and so he's on FaceTime with him. Let me just share this clip. Get right into it.
Bro, look in the cam, bro. Flip the cam.
You got me vlogging this shit.
Bro, what? They said they don't want me back. I swear.
Oh my.
That was the video right there. First of all, Weston, hey, how are you? Sorry, I just kind of like jumped into it. I didn't check in on you.
No.
Warrior, but how are you? And then what do you make of that video? Because obviously it has spiraled into many interpretations in the last 12 hours or so.
Yeah. I'm fine. Thank you for asking, and thank you for wishing a happy Father's Day, because it was a special day with the two little ones. You're right about the 49ers. I compare them to like 2-year-old children where in the moment you need them to be quiet. Like you just know that's never going to happen. So like you said, we predicted it. What I make of this is you and I text and I said, well, this has been consuming some time, and the time has been more of like deep analyzation as to like, what does this actually mean? And you know me, I've been really confident that something was going to get done with BA throughout the offseason. And I don't know if this video makes me waver at all. Like if you start with like the Jeremy Fowler reports that like things have kind of hit the brakes, right? Like there really hasn't been any traction, momentum, like whatever term you want to use. Well, I expect that. It's this kind of like time of year, like nothing's really going to get done, in my opinion, until you get closer to camp anyway. This is just a lull time, like vacations.
Yeah.
You know, you were just there for OTAs. Everybody gets out of the building. Like there's, you know, like they all have lives outside of this football team that they're all trying to figure out. Now, where I'm like perplexed is like, okay, like the video itself is damning in the sense of like this guy is literally saying that this team or they don't want me, but you have literally no context around like they,
who is
what
they?
That means. I find it really, really odd that like I know they're friends, but that another NFL player would even want to be part of this and be like associated in like media eyes like that when they got their own situation to worry about, especially if they're friends. So like, I don't know. And then if I'm really diving in the doldrums here to like really pick and pull this thing apart, like, I don't know. I would have expected a little bit more like raw emotion from BA in any video clip versus like, it was almost like he was chuckling as it was about to start and unfold. And I'm sure, again, like limited context, probably a really like mini clip. There's the pessimist in me says like, wow, that's not good. The internal optimist in me says like, is something done? behind the scenes, and this is just how they want to like, because like if
That's
you think
very
of
optimistic.
very optimistic, and I know it's not realistic, but it's optimistic. But I also think that like, BA and Debo, like they tend to like mimic one another. They tend to have this like goofing off type, like where they get more of a rise out of
They're
it.
trolling.
Totally.
Yeah.
And again, what else is he doing? He's got nothing but downtime right now. He's not participating in OTAs. So like the optimist in me is like, this is fun to them. And unfortunately, this is how things seem to get negotiated more often than not. Like it's a scenario where don't know if it helps him, but certainly doesn't hurt him. And let's put context around it in the sense of like, he's saying they don't want me. Well, by all accounts, they offered you $26 million a year. That feels like they want you, what I mean? They just might not want to pay you what you want to be paid. That's different. So I think there's so many ways to like poke holes in this, but on the same token, like it's out there, it's there. That's really BA. That's really Jaden Daniels. And he's really saying they don't want me, but why Jaden Daniels would be so excited for him, I have no idea. Like, what does he know behind the scenes that, like, okay, they don't want you for $30 million a year, but dude, like, you're still wearing a San Francisco 49er uniform, I would imagine, this year, even if it's under the fifth option. So what's that guy so excited for? You know what I mean? He's got his own position to go win. I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling.
Well, I'm also wondering why Brandon Aiyuk felt so compelled to share this on social media, like literally having his partner film it. And it seemed planned. It seemed somewhat staged. Like, I don't know if Jaden Daniels knew what Brandon Aiyuk was going to say, but just from Brandon Aiyuk and his partner, doing the video, that part of it seemed staged, and they planned to tell Jaden Daniels in that FaceTime call that they said they don't want me back. They were assuming, right, is the 49ers. Now, this is, I think, the part that I want to really drill into, because I can't picture the 49ers verbatim saying, hey, Aiyuk, like, we don't want you. And if the reports are true that Brandon Aiyuk had a $26 million offer on the table, that certainly doesn't tell me they don't want Brandon Aiyuk back. It just means we want you back at this number, and we're not moving off of it. So if that's what Brandon Aiyuk is interpreting as they don't actually want me because they're not giving me the amount that I want, and I'm willing to say yes to, and I've made that very clear, then they must not want me.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. They don't want me on my terms.
And doesn't this just feel like where we're supposed to be at these negotiations, right? Like, BA wants the 49ers to sweat. Hey, what does life look like without number 11, right? And the 49ers want BA to sweat, to be like, hey, what does life look like when you're not necessarily probably competing for championships, right? Like at this time, or a team balking at your price tag. Like, it's like FOMO, right? Like, all right, dude, like, I know you want 30, but 26, 27, maybe even 28 is not going to, are we really splitting? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many different ways you can make up that differential. It just feels like a tactic, to your point, like staged. I don't, what do we know? I'm gonna again, I'm going back to my being overly optimistic in this scenario. Like, Daniels and Aiyuk, by all accounts, are boys, right? They're buddies, right? So like, well, who's to say, like, show me the text messages prior to this call letting you know that this was going to happen. That might be like, keyword, I say they don't want me. That means the deal is almost done. You know what I mean? Like, and his boys, wouldn't your boy be more excited for you if he felt like you were really close to landing like a top 10 wide receiver contract in the NFL versus like, nobody wants me. I don't know. I'm in this limbo. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. You might be just a little too optimistic thinking that this means the deal is closed, but I'm with you. Like, this is a form of sending the message to the 49ers, which is communication.
Yep.
It might not be the most productive, form of communication, doing it through all these social media tactics and all that. The 49ers, on the other hand, as we have mentioned on previous episodes, seem to be doing it through some beat writers, changing their tune all of a sudden on how these negotiations are going. So there are, talks happening. It's just not between each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have time though to still bridge that gap. And if we recall, Deebo Samuel, you mentioned it, like there seems to be some parallels between those two off-season negotiations, both wide receivers, both dealing with the 49ers. So ultimately, we know that Deebo's deal got done. When it got done, it was, right. What was it like? Right at training camp by the start of it. Yeah. So I think it's still realistic to think that Brandon Aiyuk could very well get his deal around that time as well. I mean, it's a month and a half away from that time. And you mentioned the Jeremy Fowler report. Yes, he took to Sports Center to give an update. So I will play that clip right here so you guys can see what he had to say.
Yeah, so Aiyuk and the 49ers have negotiated, but things have stalled a bit, which is somewhat common for this time of year. They're going to see what happens over the next 6 weeks. Leading into training camp, the 49ers want Aiyuk long-term in the fold, but so far they have not been willing to show that they're going to meet the market of wide receiver, which we're seeing these massive numbers. Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, $30 million. Justin Jefferson well above that. Aiyuk believes he's a top guy, and so something's got to give. And so he's worked himself into.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, he said it, like, talks have stalled, but this is common for this time of the year. I mean, not that Brandon Aiyuk has been there at all this offseason, but, obviously with nothing happening during this time, there isn't a lot of production in these negotiations. So, hopefully, when they're back for around training camp, I mean, you would assume that'd be the time for things to really get moving again.
This is what pains me because we've just been on this topic like all off season, right?
Yeah.
All off season. And I think it's this is like pure political jargon where he's like, hey, talks have stalled. Cause for concern, but this is also really normal this time of year. Like, lack of optimism, but the 49ers are putting numbers in front of them. It's not like they're ignoring them and there's no offer that's been made and it's like no lines of communication. And then I look at this video again. It's like it's up on my Twitter feed to the right of me, and it's just like playing like in a loop, and like it starts where he's literally watching a 49er highlight like above Jaden Daniels like head, right? Like, or somebody's watching something. I'm like, what? I just. And then Jaden Daniels is holding up like 3 fingers, and it's like, well, is that 3 stacks for 30 million? You could pick this thing apart so many different ways. That's what's maddening about it. But I still like, I don't know. I'm still Steph. I'm still crazy or not. I'm still leaning towards like, I'm not terribly concerned. I'm just not. Like, I just feel like there's still room. There's still time. This is the only thing the player can control at this point in time. And BA should play this card. I mean, I don't love this card. Like, I hate this about like negotiations and how they become so public. But like at the end of the day, like it's literally the only card he has to play to try to boost his value, stir the pot a little bit, create some groundswell, whatever term you want to use. Like, of course he's going to play it. Of course he's a wide receiver in the NFL. Darn right he's going to play that card.
Yeah. And so this is what I said on Twitter about it too. So I'm just gonna share that tweet. I said, look, the 49ers have a price with no reason to move off of it. We know what that price is, like the 26 million range, or at least that's been the last reported number from Mike Silver. If he isn't accepting that, Aiyuk's alternative is playing on the 5th-year option, which 49ers would have no problem leveraging. Sounds like we're there. BA posting it for the world to see is one of 2 things, and possibly both. He's hoping it causes an uproar among fans, and in turn puts pressure on the 49ers, or he just wants fans to know, this is how the 49ers are doing him, you guys should be on my side kind of thing. Again, this is just a form of, talking to each other and talking to the fans through the media. So it's just, I don't know, just another layer to it, I guess. But to go back to the Fowler thing, one quote here, again, that I think we need to pay attention to. Fowler says the 49ers want Aiyuk long-term in the fold. Really? Because, that doesn't sound like they don't want me back, right? So, again, I don't think we should take – I think we should take Brandon Aiyuk's words with a grain of salt here in the context of, he's obviously disgruntled. He's unhappy at this stage in the negotiations. I think we can assume that much, right? But that's it.
Yeah, I'm going with to your tweet, Steph. I'm going with like uproaring fans, trolling fans, doing all of these things. Like there's professional people doing these negotiations behind the scenes, right? And I don't think his agent is probably thrilled with him in the sense of like putting out they don't want me. We keep going back to that comment that he made, but like contrary to popular belief, they do very much want him. But like all things in the NFL, like you have to draw a line. There has to be a line. You can't just go crazy. You can't compromise the opportunity to compete for a single player. But this is what the 49ers back into when they let these things drag out, right? Like 26 might have been real palatable in April and could have been a done deal before some of these other contracts. And if anything, hopefully they're learning from that, right? Like, hey, maybe we don't, if there's a player that's part of the future, peg them, like the math don't change. The math is the math, and it's always going to be math. And you know what it is at the end of the year. You know what it is 2 years down the road, outside of some restructures, et cetera. Like, you know what you have to work with. You know what you have to get done. The only projection is like what truly the future year cap's going to be. But you can always guess plus or minus a couple % of like what it's going to actually be outside of a COVID year, right? Like when revenues are down. I don't know. I'm standing on it gets done. I think the 49ers still prefer our number or the 5th-year option. But I do think there's a happy medium in here somewhere that both the parties agree to. We're just going to have to wait this out. And you know what, Steph? We'll probably be back here next Monday talking about another antics.
Yeah, probably, which it's something to talk about. But I don't remember if it was with you, Weston, or if it was my show with Desi, but I gave it a 70-30 chance, 70 chance that this deal gets done, by around training camp, 30 that he's pretty much forced to play on his 5th-year option. I'm standing pat with that number. I think I'm good with that. If you ought to give it a split, what are you giving it?
I think I'd be exactly the same, 70-30, right? And I think that aligns with how confident I've been this entire time. This is negotiations, right? The player's job is to get as much money as they possibly can within reason, right? The ownership's job is to give their players and keep them happy, and give them as much money as you possibly can within reason. And we're just still trying to find like what within reason means to both parties. And there's still plenty of time to get this done. I think the only sour point that I have is like, there's always a chance things could get really contentious, like really quick in any negotiation, right? So that is an outlier in this scenario. And with players like BA, that are now your vets and you claim are going to be part of the future, we know we're going to see a lot of roster churn next year. Like you just want those guys in-house as frequently, as often as you possibly can in the offseason. You don't want to give them an excuse to not be part of it. But if I'm Brandon Aiyuk in his camp, he's doing everything that I would coach him to do. It's just part of the game. But I rest on 70-30. Something long-term gets done.
Well, obviously this video spurred a lot of reaction. One of those being it kind of re-sparked the trade discussion around Brandon Aiyuk, right? And you can imagine fans of other teams, Steelers, for example, even Commanders, because it was Jaden Daniels on the phone with Brandon Aiyuk. And as we know, Adam Peters in Washington now, very familiar with Brandon Aiyuk. I personally am still giving that a 0% chance. Look, it's probably realistically higher than that, but yeah. I just don't think there's a chance that Brandon Aiyuk gets straight. Like, I just don't see it happening. I think the window for that closed after day one of the draft. And so I think it's more than likely he's going to be a Niner this season. Do you still think trade probably not happening this season, or do you see a scenario in which like things could get, we keep using the word contentious, like do you see it getting so ugly that it could force a divorce here in the form of trade?
Yeah, the D word. That being said, I don't think a trade is realistic this year, right? Like, well, and then next year it's free agent, so you have to negotiate at the end of next season. You have to negotiate with them anyway. And the reason why is I think teams are starting to fill out their roster right now. Things would have to get really bad, and this would have to be an early season to mid-season before the trade deadline trade. I don't think it's good business antics for the 49ers to try to move them, because I think what you're looking at in terms of a return package, if you move BA now, is picks in return. And that's a really hard sell, right? When you're in the middle of this run, to not have those picks would have been beneficial in April if you could try to find somebody to backfill or get stronger at another position to supplement the loss there. But not like losing the player is more valuable than gaining the pick for the following season that teams tend to undervalue to begin with, right? They don't view first rounds as first rounders because they still don't know where they're picking in that first round. And every team believes they're going to finish in the top 10. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's realistic that he gets traded, but I do think like it still could get contentious, right? Talking about money and but the contentious, I think would go away. The contention would go away when all is said and done, because it's all about the money anyway, right? It's all about the money. So if the money's right and you agree to it, the contention goes away. It's over. It's on to the next. Yeah. All's forgotten. In my world and line of work, we say revenue floats all boats, right? Like checks float all boats in pretty much every element of this world that you turn. And I think all would be forgiven.
Yeah. I'm with that too. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, like fans will. There's fan fiction out there, and there's a lot of Steelers fans. So, not to throw them under the bus, but also, fully wanting to throw them under the bus here. I mean, they've really been in on Brandon Aiyuk and this being a big possibility for quite some time, and I'm sure this only helped their case here, but I still don't see it happening. Weston, are you tired of talking about Brandon Aiyuk?
I'm exhausted from reading it, thinking about it. That's why I'm trying to stick to my guns. So I'm not doing the mental gymnastics. I think what perplexes me even more is like, I feel like BA is the receiver that Kyle has been looking for and hasn't had since Julio, right? When he was down in Atlanta, at least from a production perspective. And he's not, I mean, that was prime Julio, right? Like, I'm not trying to make that comparison, but what are you doing here? You're going to let the player walk? Like, this is who you've been looking for. You're not replicating this production. Like, I just don't think you are, not at least with anybody that's on the roster right now. You know what I mean? Don't like sit here and tell me that Ricky Pearsall is going to be a 1,300-yard receiver. Like, he's not. I don't even know if the man's going to block during the game. Don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's things that BA does. So if that guy is there in-house, again, what are we talking about here? $3 million a year, like cap's going up to like 250, 260, somewhere in there. You're talking about a fraction of a percent on the bottom line towards the cap next year. And good news, you'll lower the cap number this year if you go ahead and get this done. Like, and you can even play mathematical gymnastics, and you can make that real low for next year as well to pad the landing, for the following years. There's so many ways it gets done, Steph. It gets done. I just don't see this being that bad.
But, I do understand 49ers maybe like hesitancy to just give it to him and make it easy. I think, again, the 49ers want to make sure that this happens in their terms because they have so many people that they have to pay. One of those guys being Brock Purdy next season, next offseason, as we know. And let's jump to that first because Trevor Lawrence is the latest quarterback to get a mega deal, and it is mega indeed. He got a 5-year, $275 million extension, including $200 million guaranteed, $142 million at signing. Massive. I mean, you look at those initial numbers and you're like, well, if Brock Purdy is going to have another season, and let's just assume, he looks like Brock, the Brock that we know. Oh. And it's another year of other quarterbacks getting paid. We know Dak is due to get paid. We know Tua is due to get paid. The market for quarterbacks is only going to go up higher. So, I mean, when you think about what a Brock Purdy deal can look like in a year, I mean, does that make you nervous at all? Or are you just like, let's just get this thing over with so, we could put it behind us?
I mean, yeah, it makes me nervous. I mean, the reason it makes me nervous is because right now, Brock Purdy counts for 0.4% of the salary cap going into next year.
That's nuts.
So let's just get crazy for a second. And I know this is not how the math will actually line up, but just for like simplifying the conversation, let's say he goes to 50 million next season. That's what he counts on the books, right? Now he is 25% he would actually be 20% of what the cap is. And why does that make me nervous? Because I want somebody to fact check me on this. I will fact check myself after this, but I remember doing this exercise like a year or two ago when talking about quarterback contracts, where there hasn't been an NFL team that's won a Super Bowl when their quarterback counts for more than 20% of the cap. And why? Translation, you can't pay everybody else, right? You can't have this like loaded superstar roster. So the luxury of being able to have this high price talent elsewhere goes out the window when you have to pay the guy. But to your point, Steph, if Brock improves and statistically has a similar season, like I'm actually okay with the contract. It's the most important position in all of professional sports. Like, you're going to need him. That's the reality. Like, look what Trevor's, got. And I'd argue they still need a ton of help around him to get this team to where it needs to be, that he's not going to carry them there. Like, they might have just shot themselves in the foot. But here's what I really think is Brock is going to get a massive contract. And I'm just saying that off assumptions that like there's nothing about the kid that we've seen that says he won't improve year over year or that he's not going to perform. He's just that kind of guy. He hasn't tasted the money yet. This is contract year, right? Like maybe that motivates him a little bit. But I don't know if this super successful season, outside of maybe winning the Super Bowl, does catapult Brock Purdy into top 5 quarterback money. And I'm not saying Brock's going to take a home team discount. He shouldn't, right? Like every player should go get every dollar that they want. I'm not naive to that. But I also think Brock's been around the game and might see this thing a little bit differently where, hey, I'm also a benefactor of having like really good team around me. So like, is there a compromise a la Tom Brady? I'm not comparing Brock Purdy to Tom Brady. I'm not at all. But I'm saying, mentally speaking, all those years that Tom Brady was quote unquote the best quarterback in the NFL, he was never once the top paid quarterback in the NFL. Rarely was he in the top 7 to 10 because he understood there was more money to be made and he'd always be making money so long as they were competing for Super Bowls. Like, I know that's easier said than done because he also had one under his belt prior to like getting there. I just think I think Brock understands the nuances of the game and will get paid and get paid handsomely and will cripple what the 49ers want to do because he's not making $1 million in a year anymore. He's still somehow, some way going to count against the cap to the tune somewhere between $30 and $40 million, even if the salary says 50. There's just ways to work it. There's ways to kick it down. All the more reason why it is more important to get Brandon Aiyuk done now, so you are not juggling that beast next offseason as well.
Yeah, put in, I think comment says Brock Purdy is 53rd highest paid player on the 49ers roster. Offensive lineman rookie Dominic Pooney is 51st highest paid player on the roster right now. Pooney, who just got drafted, is getting paid more than Brock Purdy. Yeah, that is crazy perspective right there. Now, as far as
it's wild. That's what I'm saying. Like, he literally counts for 0.4% of their cap right now. That's insanity.
Now, to your point, though, Weston, I have said this before, and a lot of people, I guess, I don't know if maybe I'm not the only person that has said it, but I've seen other people react to people saying it. And what I say is that Brock Purdy might be open to taking less than like one of these top 5 highest paid guys, just because one, he's humble. I don't think he feels he needs like that much money, like truly humble guy. And then 2, he has repeatedly said, and as Technic Sheik points out, that like anytime he gets praise, he will literally immediately turn it over to his supporting cast, all the guys he has. And so I don't think the 49ers are going to lowball him like, maybe they have some other guys. I think when it comes to quarterbacks, and because we've seen this with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? We know they're willing to pay for what they believe is a franchise quarterback. I think they're going to give him a really handsome offer right off the bat. Maybe it might not be, Joe Burrow money. Maybe it might not be Trevor Lawrence money. And I would not be surprised if Brock Purdy's like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Now his agent might, he'll be like, no, Brock, like, trust me, I will get you more. No, don't accept that. But I think goes to our point that I think Brock, the person, I think he would take less than one of these top 3 guys. But yeah, I mean, I think just given what he's done, given what the quarterback market is, certainly he deserves to be in the top 3 of quarterbacks paid right now.
Yeah, he shouldn't take less. There shouldn't be a home team discount, right? Yeah. Yes, this is a very factual statement, by the way. That's on the bottom of the screen. I'll never live this down. 10 years married this year, another 80 to go, and she'll never let me live this down, I promise. But to me, like, he shouldn't. But I just think he's that kind of guy. And we're not talking about, like, we're talking semantics here. We're talking about $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year less than like some of these top guys. Look at that. 55, 55, 53, 52 and a half, 52. Let's say Brock was getting the contract right now. Maybe it's 48. Maybe it's 49. You know what I mean? But that's a couple players to fill out and round out your roster. That at least helps you sign your draft class when all is said and done. So you have to like look at things in perspective, but you're right. Like, the agent should be out there swinging, because every dollar less that Brock's willing to take is it's 10% of a dollar less than what the agent's going to take home. And they get one shot at these mega deals as well.
Exactly.
But the reality is like, it's all about timing, and perspective is going to be about timing. And what I mean by that is, let's say the 49ers early exit from the playoffs, right? I'll be negative and pessimistic here. Early exit from the playoffs, so they can get an early start working on this, right? And they do. And right as the league year begins, they want to go ahead and announce that which is very un-49er like, but I believe they're going to treat Brock differently. I just have this
I think so
belief.
too.
So what if they roll that out right out of the gate? Well, then who are the next 3 quarterbacks that are up for extensions? And within weeks, he's not even going to be in the top 5 of paid quarterbacks. Like, it's going to happen so fast, and we're going to stop about it. It's going to be news for like a day, maybe 2, that like, hey, this is the top guy. But that's why I'm not terribly. My concern is, again, Brock going for what he accounts for financially speaking now versus what he's going to be. And that the big shift is going to happen no matter what, whether it's 30, 40, 50, $60 million a year, it's not $1 million anymore. So the damage is done. Everything else is gymnastics in terms of like bonuses, how you're going to fit it. Look at Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, what was he, the first to 40, right? And he had 1 year we were supposed to count like 60, $70 million against the cap. You just rework it. We'll sign you. We'll give you, here's a bigger bonus up front. Like, you can play with it, but it is a big hit because of that massive. Because this is not Trevor Lawrence signing this contract, who was already making in his, on his 4th or 5th year rookie, like all that 35, 40 million fully guaranteed, whatever it was, being the number 1 overall pick in the draft. This is a guy who was making, like 2 years ago, was making $600,000 a year playing in the National Football League because of where he's drafted. So that swing, that's going to cripple you no matter what. Like, that's going to hurt, and they just have to get creative from there.
Yeah. Now, for the audio listeners who can't see what we're sharing on the screen, we're looking at the top 5 quarterback contracts by full guarantees and average per year. So full guarantees, Joe Burrow at the top, $146.5 million. Trevor Lawrence, who, like we said, just got his deal, $142 in full guarantees. Lamar Jackson coming in at $335 million guarantees. Justin Herbert, $133.7 million. Jared Goff, who recently got his deal too, within wasn't that early this offseason too that Goff got his deal? Or
a month and a half ago, a month ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that long ago.
So his full guarantees are 113.6. He's also on the older side, and you can argue that, obviously he's not an up-and-comer. He's like a veteran already in the league when he had his best season. So I think that's appropriate for where he's at. Now looking at the average per years, you have Joe Burrow, $55 million, Trevor Lawrence, also $55 million, Jared Goff, $53 million, Justin Herbert, $52.5 million, Lamar Jackson, $52 million. Now, I already mentioned we have Dak Prescott, you have Tua, who are due to get paid probably within, the next year as well. I would expect those deals probably get done before Brock Purdy, right? So at this point, let's just assume that those guys push the amount a little bit higher. Like, we could be looking at $60 million average per year for a quarterback. So I would say right now, I'm just projecting, right? Like, Brock Purdy, 60 plus million average per year. And as far as the guarantees go, he could be in that Trevor Lawrence range, right, of 142 million. And I think Jed York would sign that check.
Yeah. So here's what everybody needs to remember is the right-hand column. And then for your audio listeners, Steph, right, the 55, the per year average, right, of the contract. So Joe Burrow, you see, has a per year average of $55 million. As an example, this year, against the cap, that number is $29 million. So there's $26 million. You know what I mean? Like, it's the way things average out. It's the way you disguise the money. So he's got like an $11 million option bonus and an $8 million signing bonus. His guaranteed salary is actually only $10 million, right? And then there's the cap number, because a lot of this is given, a lot of that guaranteed money is given early and often in the form of an initial sign-on bonus. But then mathematically speaking, we say 4 years, this amount, that's this amount a year. But there's so many different ways to get cute. Like, even in 2025, the cap number will go up for Burrow, right? We're still saying 55 million a year is what he counts, but the cap number in 25 is 46 million, still less than 55. And I guarantee they'll prorate some of that, turn another $5, $6, $7 million into a signing bonus. And then the cap hit comes down. And yes, you are kicking the can down the road, But just because it says $55 million a year, that's not actually what that player is making that year,
Right.
and how it impacts the team that year as well.
Yeah, exactly. On another live, I believe it was earlier when I was on with Ashley, someone in the comments asked, we didn't get to address it during the show, but someone asked if these players are signing like 5-year deals, why are they getting extensions after like 3 years? I think teams want to give them those new extensions at 3 years, because when you do have those type of contracts that kind of do stagger out and they ladder up, like the 49ers do structure a lot of their contracts, you're seeing that the cap hits jump up after the second, third year. And so it's actually good business to go back and be like, hey, do you want another extension? Okay, great. We're going to have your cap hit lower. You're going to get some guarantees and, some bonuses. So you'll be fine. You're going to love that. But your cap hit's going to be lower than it was before what it was going to be. So that's why I think both sides, players and teams alike, you see that happening from time to time, and why both sides would be welcome to it. So I don't know. That's kind of random, but just wanted to address that.
It's all about the structure, Steph. Like, a lot of what we talk about and see is optics, right? And that's the context in which we have. Like, we're not in the rooms, we're not negotiating the contracts, et cetera. But to your point, right? Like, I keep using Burrow as the example. I mentioned cap number 29 million this year, then it's 46, then it's 48, then it's 52, then it's 53, and it's 57. But 3 of those years, he doesn't even have a guaranteed salary. Like, you hide it. And to your point, on that third year, you're like, we're basically going to extend you again, which is a renegotiation of the existing contract. And that allows us to convert some of that guaranteed money up front. You hit less against the cap. But even in those scenarios, Steph, when you think of like Burrow's worst case at, or let's say 52 million a year, that's still less than 20% of the cap, right? And like, that's the number where you want to be. So I'm not scared of the Brock Purdy contract, because I know like the jump from the less than 1% to the 12, 13, 14%, like, it doesn't matter to me if it's 40, 50 or $60 million. It's going to impact the same, because you're just not paying the guy $1 million anymore.
Yeah. Well, we will have plenty of time between now and the time this deal gets done to speculate or project what the number might be. But I think we can safely say that Brock Purdy is going to get paid, sometime next off season, and we'll be looking forward to it, to be quite honest with you. All right. Well, Weston, this has been quite the eventful show for a June Monday in this wonderful off season, but never a dull moment, like we always say with this 49ers team.
Never, ever, ever. We'll be back here next Monday. I can almost promise you something will happen from now till then that will require. Actually, Steph, can I make one point? I know you've been doing the sideshows, right? In the doldrums of the off season, and you've been talking about sparkling water. Now, I need to introduce you to the GOAT of sparkling water. Have you ever heard of Clearly Canadian?
Did you? I think you told me about this last week, or either you or someone else did. I think it was you, because I wrote it down. Clearly Canadian. I had not heard about it. Now, what's the flavor?
So this is country raspberry. They only have a few flavors. They have like a raspberry, a cherry, a strawberry, a mountain berry, and peach. Country raspberry is the GOAT. This water is from Whistler, right, in British Columbia. I used to drink this as a kid. Probably went 25 years not having it in my lifetime, and bumped into it in a store randomly like 2 years ago.
Where do you get this?
For me, in my neighborhood now, I'm able to find some, like, can't buy cases. You got to buy like individual bottles, but on the shelf in the grocery store.
Okay. All right. I'll keep an eye out for it. Yeah, no, I prefer the individual cans or bottles, because I went to Target this weekend to get some stuff that people were like wanting me to try. And, I have to buy the 6-pack of these. And then what if I hate it? Then I'm just stuck with it, having to drink it. By the way, audio listeners, if you guys haven't seen, yes, I've been doing the sparkling water ratings. I started the Olipop ratings. Those will be reserved to the weekends. But if you guys are wondering where you can find that content, it's exclusively, well, not exclusive. I don't know why I said that. It's on YouTube, it's on my TikTok, and it's on Instagram. That's not very exclusive, is it?
No, but it's very entertaining.
49K. Step 49K username on all those platforms. So if you're interested and you just want to have a good laugh or just curious about sparkling water, Olipop flavors, check that out. By the way, I was also going to be doing fan cave virtual tours with fans. I recorded the first one with a fan earlier today. And so going to be editing that in the coming days, and we'll get that out on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter as well. So make sure you guys tune in. Make sure you guys like this video if you haven't yet. Rob D, it's exclusively everywhere.
Makes sense to me.
just not on audio, obviously, for obvious reasons. But yeah, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for the exclusive content, and all this fun reporting about, all the drama happening this off season. Weston, thank you so much for joining me again on a Monday. We'll be back next Monday, but for now, have a good rest of this Monday. Peace.